Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another final prices video on ForgottenWeapons.com. This will be prices from the May 2019 auction at Rock Island. And remember, these prices all include a 15% buyer's premium in addition to the hammer price. So we will start off with this trio of engraved Glock 19s. They were sold individually, and they all kind of slightly exceeded their price estimates. To my mind, they didn't sell in the order of the amount of engraving on them, but they kind of did sell in the order of how nice they look. That middle one was my favorite of the bunch. The Whitney Wolverines went for about what I would have expected, $2,000 to about double that for the nickeled one. I mentioned this in my original video on the Wolverine, but if you are considering getting a nickeled Whitney Wolverine, there were very few of them, and they are in a very specific serial number range. But beyond that, if you're not aware of the serials, they're very easy to fake, so be very careful. This one was real, but not all of them are. There were actually two Walther Model 3s in this auction. They're a pretty rare pistol, but I think they're clearly also a pistol that where the value benefits from the fact that they are German, because both of the ones in this auction went for exactly $4,600. So that'd be a hammer of $4,000 plus 15%. They were both really nice examples, but there's a lot of pocket pistols from this period that don't quite bring that money. This was the biggest surprise to me of all the prices we're going to see in this video, the Saint-Étienne retail marked Luger. It's a DWM Luger that was sold at Saint-Étienne in France before World War I. They sold something like 200, 250. I don't remember the exact number now. I have one. I got mine for like less than 10% of this price. So either I got a really great deal or a couple people really fought over this one and drove the value way up. The Luger conversion, honestly, wasn't exactly sure where I would have expected this to go. In addition to the parts here, of course, it did come with a really nice condition original box, which is good for the collector sort of folks. It's a pretty cool conversion. It is specifically for 7.65 Swiss Lugers, so a particularly cool accessory for those. Now, going forward here, we're going to look at a couple of pistols and then a number of antique rifles as well. And what's interesting to me is we're kind of going to see this price point that keeps coming back of between $3,000 and $4,000. And I don't know that you can extrapolate from just this selection of sales, but there are a lot of antique collectible guns that are falling into that range. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people, here we have a Joslyn Army right in that same range, $3,100, $3,200. I think we're seeing a lot of people who are interested in this sort of thing and have some money to spend on it, but they look at things and they're like, well, these are all cool, but my budgetary limit tops out at maybe $5,000 or $4,000. And there are a lot of things that I will buy because I find them interesting in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. But once you get above that, the number of people interested really starts to taper off. Now, the old Army here was in a little bit rougher conditions than some of the other guns, and I believe it's a somewhat more common piece as well. So we had a little bit less here, just under $2,000. But it's an interesting trend that I saw looking across a lot of the different guns. Now, Colt Aircrewman, I told you in the video this was an exceptionally rare gun, and well, $11,000 says I wasn't wrong. There are a lot of Smith & Wesson Aircrewman revolvers out there, but the Colt model, because it was basically pulled and replaced because of it, well, pulled and destroyed usually because of its aluminum cylinder, very few of those are around, and there are a lot of diehard Colt collectors who want one. The one item that we're going to look at today that I did video on that didn't actually sell was the 1927 Thompson. This was the factory semi-auto Thompson. However, because its receiver is effectively identical to a machine gun, these are still NFA registered guns. The estimate on this was $45,000 to $75,000, which I think was pretty high, and usually that's why a gun doesn't sell, is it doesn't meet a reserve minimum price. Now, looking at a couple of the other machine guns that were here, they had a transferrable M37. This is like the product improved final best version of the Browning tank machine gun. $20,000 plus 15% gives you $23,000. A pretty cool gun, but this kind of falls into that area like some of the heavy machine guns out there where there just aren't all that many people looking for tripod-mounted machine guns for this kind of money. Now, the Portuguese 938, which is a German MG13, this one is a pre-86 dealer sample. Dealer samples generally bring a lot less than transferable guns. However, a pre-86 sample means that if a dealer gives up their license, they get to retain ownership of guns like this one. So in some ways, it's halfway between transferable and a sample. And so 23,000 makes sense to me. These are quite rare. The Knoch pistol honestly brought more than I thought it would, but we're seeing that same sort of $3,000 to $4,000 range for a lot of these guns. This particular one was quite rare, but also, again, in fairly rough condition, missing some parts, some frozen pieces on it. So hopefully whoever got that will enjoy it. It's certainly an interesting addition to a collection of Needlefire guns, and it's not the only Needlefire that we had in this auction. There was also this Merckelbagh Needlefire Conversion, and once again, it's at the low end, but we're seeing basically $3,000 to $4,000. So this one was in nicer condition than the Knoch pistol, but very much an interesting esoteric collector's gun. I don't think anyone's going to actually shoot this guy. We're going to continue looking at some of the other rifles. The North & Skinner, once again, like I said, $3,000 to $4,000. We have another one that falls into this range. Revolving rifles are cool. This one had a particularly interesting chamber sealing system where there's basically a wedge lock that pushes the cylinder forward and nests the chamber onto the barrel to prevent gas blow-by. It's a very cool system, but it's a limited number of people who are interested. Once again, not to continue repeating myself, but $3,000 to $4,000. This bolt-action conversion of a French musket, a French rifled musket. Honestly, I considered bidding on this one myself and just didn't have the budget to do it. I think it's a pretty cool gun, but again, it's a very specific thing, and it's not the sort of gun that you're going to go out and shoot. Now, the one area where we can kind of break out of this $3,000 to $4,000 range are guns that are a little more substantially historical, and a Belgian trials rifle falls into that. Not by a lot, but this, I think, is really cool. There are going to be people out there who are interested in trials rifles from the turn of the century, and the Marga is a really neat example that you're probably not going to see another example of. Compare that to a gun like an 1892 Mauser, very rare, but they did mass produce them. They did make a couple thousand of these all told. So while they show up pretty infrequently, they fall back into that $3,000 to $4,000 price range of people who have the money to do it, but, not a ton of money. We're not just throwing money around for no reason. So, and then kind of like the Marga, the Schlegelmilch is another very significant trials rifle. And we get that German benefit here, where this rifle competed directly against the Mauser 98. And that makes it a lot more interesting in a lot of people's eyes than something like a Marga, where just based on mechanical characteristics, it's not necessarily all that distinct. The two of them share a lot of overall features. Anyway, someone I think got a pretty darn good value on this guy. $2,000 for an authentic Cold War sniper rifle is a pretty slick deal. Hopefully they enjoy it. I think that's a really cool piece of kind of East meets West, a Mauser action with a Soviet Mosin-Nagant PU scope on it. Very cool. I think that was in good condition. Someone did well on that. This goes back into our same price range, but to be honest, I'm kind of surprised it got that high. This particular example was really quite rough. I think there's some replacement parts on it. There's damage to it. I didn't think it would get this high. Now, turret rifles of all sorts are quite rare, and in this case, at least, rare enough that someone was willing to spend a little over $3,000 to have an example of the Genhart. The other one that really surprised me was the Morse. Now, these are extremely scarce guns, but this is one gun out of what was originally a three-part cased package. It's got some missing parts. It had a bunch of damage. You can see the chip out of the stock on the Tang in this picture, and yet it brought $4,600. So someone really wanted this gun. And then the last one, which you may not even remember, this was the very first video from the series I posted way back in February on Valentine's Day, and so I don't know who out there exactly is spending $12,000 on Bobbie Ford's erotic Deringer pistol, but I hope they enjoy it. It was a really, really fun gun to take a look at, the sort of thing that you really don't see coming up very often, and proof that really everybody out there has a sense of humor. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the recap of the prices, and stay tuned. We'll have another auction series coming up in a couple months.